Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters number 373. And we have one of our favorite guests on today, and we will definitely get to him in a minute because we're super excited to talk to him. I mean, we've had him on the show a number of times, so you probably know and love him. But today's kind of a little different because he just launched a big project that a lot of people, myself included, have been anticipating. So we're going to get to Gary in a minute. First, we're going to do what we always do and go around the virtual room and introduce ourselves and talk about what we got going on, what anything we have to promote, and all of that good stuff. So I always want to say you're on my channel so you know who I am, but you're not on my channel. You're on Corey's channel, even though today I'm kind of taking over the hosting duties. But if you want to find me on my YouTube channel, you can go to just search CircWorks on YouTube and you'll find my channel. I'm currently not uploading anything new, but I will be. The goal is next month. So I'm excited about that, but there's still plenty of content there to check out. Like over 1,000 videos worth of content. And in addition to that, you can check me out on my website where I have digital tools for making comics. I also have my own comics. One of them is Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure story. Josh is like,
you're looking at the centerfold.
I don't know why that's funny.
Yeah. Racy. Don't let your kids.
There is. I don't know if it's directly in the center, but there is a centerfold, and yeah, I don't even know how I would describe it, to be honest. But
I will say, just to show you one panel of the centerfold.
Oh yeah,
that wasn't the centerfold I was talking about, but I was talking about the double page spread. That's
a very handsome soldier there.
He's a good-looking guy. Yeah.
That is the literal centerfold. That's where you can see the staples.
That is the center. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, the one I was thinking of wasn't probably directly centered, but it is a double.
The one I was thinking of was the one that has like the fold-out pages and it's a little racy. That's the one I was thinking.
Oh, where was I? So yeah,
already off the rails.
I know that's my job.
I too have a comic book. It's Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure story. If you're into all those old 80s action films starring kids as the protagonists, like Goonies, Monster Squad, Explorer, E.T., all that kind of stuff, then you'll probably dig it. Just think something like that, but with zombies. And yeah, so that's at my website. So that's me, and I'm going to move around this way. And Josh, what's that there you're reading there?
Oh, hello. I was just reading a brilliant comic book by Gary Hodges called 1979. It's a DvsM comic. It's pretty good. Anyhow, you distracted my reading, but that's okay. I'll talk about my stuff. So you can find out my stuff at Joshua Kimball on YouTube. I just had a real uptick in subscribers, and I'm kind of encouraged by that. So I appreciate that, and I think you guys, if you aren't following them, would really enjoy the live streams that I've been doing and the vlogs I've been doing lately. I've been upticking my content because I'm getting returns for it. So I appreciate
everybody. You're putting out a lot more content, so that I can see why more people are signing up.
Yeah, but anyhow, thanks to everybody who did. And then also check out Jacob's Apartment and Two Stories, my 2 books. And of course, if you guys haven't yet, what are you doing? Pick this book up. You should. Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? I said we were going to go around this way, but we're not going to go around that way. We're going to play some kind of weird Hollywood Squares or something. We're going to go back up to Corey.
Wait, no. This way. Yeah, there you go.
It's a game of Pong.
Yeah.
Buy shirts.
That's what it says.
Nice.
Yeah, you can find
Where do you get those shirts?
Find my stuff at CoreyCurr.com.
What if I'm not a fan of shirts and say I want like a mug?
Oh, well, actually, if you go right up here and under buy stuff, I've got t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, laptop sleeves, flags, all kinds of different things. So you could look at mugs, for example, since that's what you mentioned. Lots of mugs available.
Those are some nice looking mugs.
Yeah.
Like
one of those like a mug I might have in my my cupboard.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the one you have. Hold on.
It's right there. Right, you just went by it.
Oh yeah, you had this one.
Scorpion and the Frog. Yeah.
I've always been wondering. I've never asked you why you chose that one out of all the mugs.
I've just always enjoyed that. What would you call it? A parable?
Yeah. Cool. Good stuff. Yeah. So you can see my stuff there. I'm also doing some different things on YouTube. Some of them are being received well, and others are not. But two things. So I've got one, maybe two more videos in the Intentional Creativity series. And so if you haven't watched any of those, go catch up. There's 3 of them out. They're pretty good. Getting some really good results in a face-to-face class that I've been doing now for a little while. And so I'm sharing those kind of findings on YouTube. And those are free. And it will... Let me see. So the stuff that we're doing is scientifically proven to reduce anxiety and depression while increasing your empathy with other people, your moral compass, your long-term memory, your ability to come up with creative ideas, specifically associating dissociated ideas, and just generally being a better human than most people who are only consuming things. Then the other thing is going to be I'm doing more of a art card catalog. And so if you want to add different tips and techniques and tricks and ways to kind of reverse engineer and learn and kind of leap ahead, close that gap between where you want to be and where you are as an artist, you can kind of check that art catalog. I got to get that one down. Art card catalog series. I've actually been scouring my city looking for like a physical card catalog so that I can like get some footage to build a little intro. I can't. I'm like can't find one. Anyway, I'm like into that shot enough to where I might buy like an old card catalog off of eBay or something, and just so I can shoot it. But I think probably is cheaper to just drive around and try to find one somewhere. Somebody's got to have one. I mean, Yeah. It's not like
for a second there, Corey, I thought you said a Cartnark catalog, and I was like, Cartnarks, yes. Anyhow, sorry.
I don't know what that is.
What is a Cartnark?
Oh my gosh. It's a YouTube channel where there's this guy who he literally travels the country going to different shop or parking lots at stores, like random stores, and finds people who didn't put their cart back and then confronts them and asks them to return their cart.
Wow.
And he's done it for years. It's like a great YouTube channel, especially if you're a stickler about returning your carts. It's
worth it. Write that down because I
love it. I love it.
So hold on.
It's hilarious because people will sometimes almost murder him for asking.
I'm sure they lose their mind. Yeah,
that's great. I got to check that out. I'm surprised I haven't heard of that.
So Chris knows. He was like, "Return your cart, Cartnarks."
Real quick before we get to Gary, were you done, Corey? By the way,
I am. I'm done.
Just real quick, something we neglected to mention, but we'll throw up. We got a few messages here. So it is Josh's birthday. So happy birthday, Josh! And I thought he'd be out partying, but he's here with us tonight.
He's
awesome.
partying at home with us.
Yeah, I thought nothing better than to drink an IPA with my buddies and work on comics. That to me is a good birthday.
I was told Jim Lujan was going to sing you happy birthday in a breathy way like Marilyn Monroe and to John Kennedy. I thought that's what I was told.
I know Jim is full of a lot of promises that he's not delivering on. Not delivering, Jim. I wanted my happy birthday song.
Lame. Yes, come on. Happy birthday, Mr. President, Jim. Come on.
Exactly.
All right, so now to Gary. Gary,
yes.
I was going to ask what you got going on, but we're going to talk a lot about that. But why don't you kind of tell us what you got going on? Because you got a couple of things. You got something else coming up in a week?
Sure.
2 weeks?
Yeah. So just in case there's anybody watching who has not caught me before, unlikely, but you never know. So my name's Gary Hodges. I'm the creator, writer, and artist behind the indie comic series DvsM. Also known as Dinosaurs versus Marsbots. It describes the top secret war that took place between the 70s and the early 2000s. It involves men in black and scientists and soldiers and aliens and, yes, dinosaurs. To see how it all fits together, you'll have to read the book. It is all eyewitness accounts. So each individual DvsM focuses on a particular character and tells a complete story about their experience in the so-called Dinosaur-Martian War. These are the 3 I have out so far. I just finished the 3rd one, DvsM 1979, which we're probably going to talk a lot about tonight. 3 more to come. They're fat books, 40 to 60 pages, depending on which one we're talking about. Like I said, each one's a standalone story. You can read them in any order you like. I'm not going to be the boss of you. I prefer release order, which just for the record is 75, which is about Men in Black, 97, which is about an innocent bystander who witnesses something she shouldn't have seen, and then 79, which is about a scientist in a top secret military research facility. You get sci-fi horror, you get suspense, you get a fair amount of gnarly violence, you get alien stuff, you get all that kind of fun. But more than anything else, with each one, I try to tell really rich, interesting character stories and try to give you something to think about and try to make you feel something and try to tell you a story that will stick with you. So that's DvsM.
Yeah, and you do an amazing job at that. And I'll say without hyperbole that I'm always just excited when Gary's got a new issue, and it really is the one. If people ask me, can you give me one independent comic that maybe I haven't heard of that is really good, it's always the one I recommend. So I mean, it's just, and I recommend it to a lot of people because I think it is so great, and I just wish more people knew about it. So we can have Gary on the show, but we can only do so much. So I mean, anyone that's read this will most likely spread the word, because it's just it's really like one of my favorite comics. And with only a few exceptions, with maybe people that I might not think it might be too either violent or something, but for the most part, I recommend it. It's the one comic that I recommend to people who may not be comic readers, because it's it's got a certain tone to it, and if I think they'll like that type of thing, I won't hesitate to recommend it. So, and it's a good ambassador, or a good way to get people into comics who may think, oh, comics are superheroes or whatever, or I'm not really into comics. I think you can convert them by showing them this book. So
thank you so much. Yeah. That really means a lot to me. And one of the things I do take some pride in like this whole experience so far, because I've been doing this now for 4 or 5 years, something like that. Like the comics, I was doing stuff before DvsM stuff before that, but the comics started in 2019, I think. I do feel like DvsM, there's a little bit of crossover there, in between like the hardcore comic community, which I do have some fans there, but then also people who've never read a comic, who don't know anything about comics, who generally, if you caught them before, would have said like, I don't really care about comic books. And I really take a lot of satisfaction from that. I really like that, I think all of us here, I'm always quick to evangelize comics as a medium, comics as an art form. And it's great when I feel like somebody who wasn't interested in them before is now like, oh no, I kind of see why this is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we were told when we were going to do this and we were going to ask some questions that we weren't allowed to throw out any softball questions. But I do have one that's sort of a softball just to kind of get us out there. Okay. But I was just something I was curious. You were talking about your preferred reading order being release order. Now you've talked also about releasing this book as a trade.
Yes.
How will that be presented? Or have you?
I will probably arrange the trade in release order.
Oh, really?
Which I will cause some people to scratch their head, and I wonder, like, they might just write it off as like, oh, well, he's just arranging it in the order he released these books, the order he did these books. True, but I'm choosing the order to release them based on bigger things. Like, I feel personally that the themes and the sort of character work I'm doing, each one is sort of the logical next story from the last. I really do think they flow together that bit. They flow better the way I've released them. If you read them in chronological order, like the plot chronological order, so if you do 75 first and then do 79 and then do 97, I would say the Dinosaur Martian War plot elements might flow better. They might make more sense. You might see like how there's a sequence of events here. But in terms of the character work and the themes, I think that kind of gets interrupted a little bit. That's why I prefer the order I'm making them, the order I'm releasing them. There is also a little bit of a, I'm still operating under, well, I will through all 6 of these, a mixtape logic. And it's, if anyone's ever seen High Fidelity, there's that part where Rob, the main character, is explaining, like, if you're doing, there's a science to mixtapes. Yeah. You want to start big, and then your second one needs to be even bigger. You got to take it up a notch. But then the third one, you got to quiet down. You got to show that you can, like, that's sort of how I arrange DvsM. Thematically, but then also in terms of I looked at the stories I wanted to tell, and it's like, well, how do I arrange this in a way that would be fun for people who catch me in the beginning and read in order as I'm releasing them?
Yeah, it's funny. I've never seen High Fidelity, but I know intuitively, just from listening to albums and kind of this is kind of the flow. This is how they're kind of structured, how you would do that. So when you're doing a mixtape or whatever. So it's interesting. So, but I haven't seen that movie. But
okay, Scott, yes. Real quick, we have to highlight the fact that you haven't yet seen High Fidelity. You need to see High Fidelity.
You need to see it, especially you.
We're going to peer pressure you to do this because it's a good movie.
It's not. I don't have anything against seeing it, or it's not like I don't want to see that or anything. It's just one of those.
That you'll watch it tonight when you're done. The second you hit stop.
So another soundtrack too, by the way. Phenomenal soundtrack.
Yeah. So, Another thing that I would mention along with that kind of the order, and that did surprise me a little that that's how you're going to present it, but I'm totally for that because that's how I would suggest people read them, at least from what I know now. I mean, I don't know what the next ones are going to be, what order those are going to be in, but it's also I always compare Gary's books to like Quentin Tarantino meets X-Files. So or that's not compare, but that's how I would describe them, to just kind of sum them up in an elevator pitch. And that kind of goes back to that Tarantino thing, at least with like a Pulp Fiction or something, where the sequences aren't necessarily in order. So interesting.
Which I lean on that pitch all the time. I probably if the world was fair, I'd be paying you a royalty because like every time I'm at a con, I'm like, it's like Quentin Tarantino meets X-Files all the time.
And there's a lot more to it. I mean, you could say there's a little bit of Jurassic Park, but I hesitate to say that because other than just the idea of recreating dinosaurs, there's really not much, and there being dinosaurs. So I don't really say that, but that is I guess there's definitely
and that strange character that keeps
similarity.
Yeah, that strange character that keeps popping in, talking about chaos theory is, I don't know.
Right, Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum, the actor, appears regularly.
Yeah, exactly. All right. He's like, "Hi, I'm Jeff Goldblum."
Right.
I've asked a couple of questions, and I've got some more, but I figured I'd open the floor to Corey and Josh if they have anything they want to dive in. So I'm not occupying.
Do I need to be sworn in or anything? Do I need to?
That's true.
Well, you're probably used to that, I'm guessing.
So
your line of work.
I think we're mostly going to get into serious questions, but before, Jim Lujan would never forgive me if I don't ask, why do you want to kill Boy Scouts? And that has nothing to do with this issue, but
okay, for people who are unaware, in DvsM 1997, there is some Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts. I haven't really decided. It depends how old they are, I guess. Meet an untimely fate. Maybe at the end of the show I can tell my Cub Scout story, why I might have some latent, deep anger.
I wasn't sure how true that was or how.
It's 100% true. 100% true, that story.
So it might have been a moment of like, if they can finally get theirs. Yes. That's right.
No, I have nothing against the Cub Scouts or the Boy Scouts. Unless, of course, you're involved in a class action with them right now, which I understand, and I hate the Boy Scouts too, and the Cub Scouts. No,
hearing that story, I had a kind of sort of not as similar but adjacent story about a a Cub Scout or Boy Scout play that I was in as well. So it's kind of funny when you said that. I'm like, oh man, there's some
Let's trade
similarities.
stories at the end of the stream.
Yeah, we'll have
end.
to do that. So remind us to do that.
Yeah, stick around for some juicy, hot gossip about what infuriated Mr. Hodges to the point where he had to kill Cub Scouts in his book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
All right. On a more serious note, I don't know. I feel like, Scott, you have more structure laid out for your questions, so I don't want to walk over one you might have written. Corey, is there any?
A few questions.
I've got process questions, but
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that's what we're doing.
Process might be a good starting point. I think.
Yeah, process would be a good starting point.
I mean, the title of this episode is Dissecting DvsM, and then it's the art of storytelling. So I assume we're going to get into that. So.
Okay, so let's jump in then.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
No, this is.
You got a smoking jacket you want to put on?
You do one of the things that people who don't do this drive me absolutely insane. Even as a kid, this used to bother me.
Okay.
Is when somebody has some sort of pattern, especially if that pattern is like checks or lines. And then like you'll see this in animation where they're like swinging their arm and it's obvious that the shape is just moving over a mask, like that the pattern doesn't change.
Yeah.
That bothers me so much.
Yeah,
I hate it. I cannot and so for this here, you'll see that I don't know, I don't have the best setup right now.
Are we talking about Dr. Veronica Wagner's jacket?
Yeah, so she's got the jacket, right? And I love that you have it. I do this as well because it drives me insane. That it contours, the lines actually contour the surface of the jacket, and so just like actual fabric, when it wraps around, you see the curve. When it folds, it's going to kind of bulge upward and then tuck under the curve. It follows the contour of the cloth. And so I guess
there's
my first question
is in the shoulder. There's
yeah. Exactly.
I try to do that too, but I'm not as you know, I don't want it to look flat like it's just laid over. But I'm not like you could look at one of my drawings and there might be one or two less lines or something, which Gary's a little more meticulous about that, a lot more meticulous.
Yeah, and I don't mind either approach, but it's where like everything is just on a 90 straight grid, and then you just like it's like you cut out things and just like pasted it on top of the artwork. Right. I hate that so much.
It looks like Zipatone. It looks like they just kind of like and added over it. Right.
I will make one argument for the case use of that. I think that that's completely acceptable if you're working in like cartoon modern, like like a style that's very flat,
like the
UPA kind of style. I think it can be really charming, or like using it in the way like Mary Blair would use really flat textures and patterns in her illustrations and stuff.
Joelle Jones did it in Lady Killer. And I forgave it because she's just kind of stylish enough where it's like it sort of works.
But most of the time, it doesn't. It's just lazy.
I didn't notice. I'll have to look at Lady Killer again.
What's that?
I didn't notice it in there.
There's at least one example, but I painted myself into a corner with the style of DvsM, which is very exacting, and it's I'm trying to be very like accurate to just how things look. So that's something where I can't cheat that. I need to make that look. How it would look, and you guys got to suffer through me whining about drawing that jacket for months.
That does bring up a really interesting kind of process question in the sense of, why would you choose to do a plaid jacket that's like close to impossible to draw, on multiple panels throughout the story?
For punishment.
Right. Well, because I'm a masochist. No,
before you get to why though, my question is just really quick.
Yeah.
Is this vector? Is this raster? Is this ink? And if it's ink, is it brush? Is it nib? Is it micron? Like what are we actually looking at? Because we're looking at Chris there. It could be any number of things.
we're looking at it's with a lot of DvsM, we're looking at a blend of techniques, which I think sometimes makes it sort of fun to look at. But roughly speaking, and I could do a whole video about her plaid jacket, maybe I will at some point. Roughly speaking, what we're looking at is hand-drawn plaid made into a vector brush that I can now like draw over her coat. And then that gets me most of the way. But then it gets very repeaty and it can kind of look it doesn't quite look right. So then me going in and messing around with it to kind of blend it, like kind of make it look a little more natural and organic. But roughly, yeah, generally it is hand-drawn, scanned in, turned into a vector brush, and then drawing those lines over the coat.
So hand-drawn meaning
like on
brush, micron?
No, it was a microns.
Okay. And then when you say vector brush, is it like as I'm looking at this, let me pull this up again. Would it be like one of those verticals that has like multiple parallel lines all in the same brush?
Yes. So the brush draws each one of those bands where there's like, I think if I remember right, there's a thick center one, and then on either side there's 3 thinner. And they're a little raggedy to kind of show that it's it's like a tweedy kind of plaid jacket. So I didn't want it to be sharp and clean. I wanted it to look a little ragged. And so and I drew a length of it, scanned it in, and then you especially, since you kind of you're the Adobe master, but anyone who's screwed around with Illustrator, you can make your own brushes out of any kind of vector shape you want. So you scan it in, you live trace what you drew. Now you've got this vector, and now you make that into a brush, and you make it, and you screw around with it until the ends kind of meet nicely, and like you don't see any weird gaps or some weird, which you started with a hand-drawn thing, so of course it doesn't match perfect. And then that's where you're messing with it and finessing it. And then you're using the brush tools, or like the line tools, the line weight tools. When, for example, you could have plaid going up her arm, and then it's starting to go up over her shoulder, and it's kind of tapered. It's looking smaller. You're getting a little bit of a perspective thing. So now you're going in with the line width tool and kind of like tightening that, it's a lot of contouring, like this thing. It's why it's laborious, even with the cheat of, well, I'll make a brush. And when I hit onto that, after I drew it by hand a couple times, I was like, this is a nightmare. Hey, you know what? I can make a brush out of this. Oh my God, this is going to be nothing now, and it's still a pain. It's still, like, there's no easy way to do it. Yeah.
So real quick, Chris,
when you say you then messed with it, you're talking line width tool, adding anchor points and moving handlebars. Do you ever line width appearance and go in and just?
So line width tool, and then when I think it's mostly in the ballpark, then I expand appearance. And then I can go in and push it around and draw over it in places, it always takes some massaging, because it's not a perfect thing, but it was the best idea I had at the time.
I think it's a great idea to get you.
It is a good idea.
I like how it looks, and that's ultimately, I guess, what matters, is that, like, I like what it looks. Now, to answer Josh's question about why would you do that to yourself, there are a couple reasons. First of all, it's a black and white comic, and you're always looking for ways, how do I make this visually interesting? Like, I love Sin City, don't get me wrong. I don't want it to look like Sin City. I want it to look like, I want to use whatever little tricks and tools I have to add some depth and volume to scenes, which is tricky when you're doing black and white. So some of that is, well, if she has a patterned coat, there's some visual interest there. I was also really concerned about visual interest, because just like with 97, where I have people talking in a cell for a lot of the time, and it's like, how do I keep this interesting? 79 opens with a sort of argument in a room with 2 people, and how do I keep this visually interesting? I think the drama is there. I think the character stuff is there, but I don't want to let the visual stuff down. Because like, oh, well, I'm doing all character stuff. That's all that matters. It should all be hitting. So it's like, well, this gives you something kind of fun to look at visually. As much as this was a nightmare to do the coat, every page I finished, I was like, that coat looks kind of cool. Like I just liked how that looked. So I was like, okay, that's why. And then if you really, it's a little artsy, but to me, the Dr. Wagner character represents maybe the most morally, ethically conflicted that I've written so far. I liked the sort of wink of this kind of black and white character, this character that has like this, like, this might be a fun way to kind of make the art mirror the themes, mirror the narrative, it's like, we'll go that far with it. Like, I'll draw her in a way that I think fits everything I'm trying to say with her and everything I think she is. So I just liked that.
Yeah.
Chris has a question. Wants to know: do you make character sheets before doing your pages?
No, I do like no. No, I should. What I generally do, I have sketches. Like I have just real crude sketches. Their look gets locked in the very first time I draw them on the page, which is probably not the best way. I think it's similar to probably how Jim Lujan finds his. Like, I will sit and noodle with the character the first time I draw them, whether it's Dr. Wagner, whether it's Peter in this, whether it's Mike, whoever. Like, the first time I draw them, I'm just sort of finding them. It's like, maybe like this, maybe like this. How am I doing it? And then once I have it, everything after that is like just keeping consistent with whatever the decisions I made that first time. So I don't get lost in the weeds of, like, I don't do turnarounds. It would probably be good. Usually by that point, I'm just eager to get going and get drawing. And if I'm going to be drawing, I would just assume draw pages rather than draw turnarounds.
Nice. I wanted to show people this really quick just because I was inspired by what Gary was describing. So just in case you guys want to know how you do what he was just talking about, you basically make, like a pattern, like you can just build it or whatever. And obviously you're going to do this much more elegantly, but you can just kind of drag it into your brushes like so. Hold on a sec. You basically drag this little box, like once it's got like an invisible thing, into your patterns like so, and then you can go to suddenly, like, once you have your brush, you've dragged it in and done it as like a pattern, then you can draw it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm guessing what you did was a little
kind
more
of like,
more sophisticated than that. But I thought just real quick to show people visually a little bit of what you're talking about.
More granular, where, like, so the example you have there, the swatch you made.
Yeah.
For mine, it would just be like, for example, that vertical, the fat with the two narrow to either side.
Got it. That way you.
So I'm like drawing all the verticals and then all the horizontals. So because it allows me more control over how each one is going. If I had a swatch like that, especially for the perspective stuff and the contour stuff, it would
it'd be close to impossible to fully control both, like the alternating lines. But that's cool. That's
next time you do something like this, you got to come and talk to me because I had a solution for you.
Oh my god, I'm sure you did. Okay, well, it might come up again because in the next one I'm picturing a guy with like a camo jacket.
This is where Corey will say the solution is she's wearing a black jacket.
She's wearing a black wig.
No, so Yuko Shimizu, right?
Yes.
Famous Japanese American illustrator.
She's wonderful.
Oh, I love her work. She's so good. Does everything with a sumi brush. She does a lot of infinite patterns and things in her work. And what she does to get it to be seamless, she starts in the middle of the page and then she fills up that, and then she cuts the page in half and switches the sides and then draws from the sides towards the new center.
Okay. Yeah,
so it's seamless because it starts and you fill in the middle and then you cut that.
Right.
And then you go like this and you draw it in by hand. So you're literally getting it to be seamless on the paper.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really clever.
Yeah, I thought it blew my mind when
I
she
like
did that.
that.
I was like, that's beautiful.
Okay, I'm gonna have to think about that. And like I said, I'm expecting more patterns in the next one that I would like a better solution. But
So,
I'll tell you, so about halfway through the book, Veronica takes her jacket off finally because she's kind of getting comfortable, and boy, that was a happy day.
I remember,
felt a sigh of relief.
in the chat, so you're like, I'm done drawing this. It's over.
Yeah. But I wasn't. There's actually, if you read it, there was one last glimpse of it when she's leaving the room that she went in. You see her coat hanging on the coat, like there's a coat rack off in the corner, and it's hanging there. And I was like, damn it, there was one more to do. Like, I was furious. But anyway, yeah.
So that's something I'm kind of curious about, because there's a lot of texture and variety of detail. Like there's splatter, there's textural like patterns on wallpaper, there's different different styles of execution, which really makes it visually rich, and I like the negative splatter that you've used on like sound effects at certain points where there's like almost like a white crusty texture over stuff. It's just really cool, the variety of textures. But what's interesting to me is like to make a choice like that sequentially and then stick with it, but also kind of hate your past self for making that sequential choice as you're doing it. And I feel I'd relate to that a lot. I think that's kind of half the process.
Something I've talked a lot about on with the Making Comics guys on the Making Comics podcast is that I very much feel like there's this kind of creative director / writer Gary, and then there's art Gary. And writer Gary's going to make decisions that he thinks are best for the story and best for the look of the book. And art Gary just has to be the art monkey and draw it. And and I'm pretty good at keeping that separate, where even though, yes, it's making my life hell, I do know the book will be better for this.
Yeah.
So it's...
I think that's great.
$1 million,
I love it.
Did you have other process questions, Corey?
No, I think that's it for now.
Okay, Josh, what about you, or do you want me to?
No, it's all yours.
All right. So where do I say? I talked. One of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about. We pointed this out on another show, but and this is sort of a process thing, but it's also a storytelling device that you use that I hadn't seen before. And for anyone that didn't watch, was it on your channel that we talked about that? I don't know. I think we did the trick you did with the word balloon. So if you watched, so Gary did something that I have never seen anyone do, and I asked him if he picked that up from somebody, but it sounds like he kind of created that. So
I want to be very careful. I can say very honestly, I think I just sort of came up with it. I could have seen it somewhere and forgot. You know how this works. I don't know, but I would give credit if I felt like, because there's lots of other things in this book that I would say like, I saw somebody else do this and I loved it, so I stole it. That I think I just did. There might be an example of that somewhere, but I think I just seemed like a fun thing to do.
Yeah,
even if there are examples of it, it doesn't mean that you were like looking at those examples, because it is kind of funny because that and I think Scott's talked about that, but it's like when I saw that panel, I immediately was like, why haven't I done that before? That's great.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I look back at my book, and there were places where I should have used that if I would have thought about it, but I didn't. It's like one of those things. And what we're talking about, because I meant to mention what it was, but there's something that Gary has done a couple times in his book is when somebody's speaking, like they're in a room and somebody's just kind of coming by and they're not getting the whole conversation, they're just getting part of it. He'll kind of cut that, like the balloon will be coming out like out of the door and part of it kind of disappears behind the door. And I've seen you do similar things that I guess I didn't notice in some of I think you did in this issue and some of the other ones where if people are speaking over each other, the balloons will be covering. And I may have seen that before, but you do a lot with like word balloons that just make a lot of sense. Because I was looking at one of my comics and there was a part where the person's saying something is kind of describing the fate of somebody who we don't reveal till later, and I just kind of trailed it off with either like the 3 dots or something like that, and just like, but I definitely should have done that, something like that where it went off panel or something like that. I just love that, and I wish I would have used that. But just,
I really
great technique, and something that, so I mean, that's what's great about comics. And anytime I see anything like that, it's just like, oh wow, that is super cool that they used, that they were able to do that. But like I told Gary on his show, if I was still doing, you know, comic making videos and talking about that, I definitely would have used that example, because it's, or like in my comic, I did a whole comic book masterclass, which is available on my website, but it's all about things you can do with word balloons, and that's just something that I hadn't seen before. And I'm kind of, if I ever do a revised edition, I guess I'll mention an addendum.
I would be honored. I would be honored. No, I really appreciate that. And well, and Christopher mentioned something about that too. I had Christopher Runciman take one last look at it before I send it off to the printer. And while it's maybe adjacent to this, but similar, it's like, I really enjoyed how in the beginning you meet the main character, and she's sort of in silence. She's on her own, alone. And the conversation sort of moves into frame and to her, and then kind of moves away from her. And it's illustrated like that. You kind of, you're seeing like smaller bubbles in the distance kind of peeking out of a door. And then as people are walking away, you're seeing them kind of moving off frame. I think people will be able to pick up on this if they've read my work, or if they go and read it now. I really love. I think it's probably my most favorite part of the whole thing is writing dialogue, and there are a lot of challenges with that when you're depicting dialogue visually. That actually this sounds like a cliche, but I really do view as fun opportunities. How am I going to illustrate people talking over each other? How am I going to illustrate someone interrupting somebody? And like in 97, how am I going to illustrate a staticky, crackly voice on a radio that's breaking up? You know, like how do I want that? Because that all has to be visual. So like, what am I going to do to make it look the way I picture it in my head? So I really appreciated you noting it and telling me about it.
Christopher says that Alex Toth has examples where he's done off-panel talking. So I'd be curious to see what those.
I would too,
and if they're similar. Yeah. But that wouldn't surprise me. He's a master.
Yeah.
So, but
of course.
But,
yeah.
So,
I wanted to bring up just the fact that like that is just one example of like the medium really being used for what it can do best. Like there's just multiple examples like throughout this entire book where there are some really profound decisions that further the story that are also kind of pushing comics like to their limit. And I really appreciate that a lot, while also remaining within a pretty consistent grid, which is harder done than said. So that's really cool. One thing I wanted to ask about, and Scott, if this overlaps with a question of yours, just cut me off.
I might just add it.
Okay. One of the things that I think every DvsM has that I think this one, it like accelerated to like almost perfection, was your timing.
Yeah. I was gonna say pacing and tension and suspense.
Yeah. There's a scene where I was just stunned, and I mentioned this after reading it. Like this is like, it's funny, whenever I read a book by a friend, I'm both excited for them and reading it because I enjoy their work, but I'm also like, anytime I read a comic, I'm kind of reading it analytically, like, because it's what we all do, right? And the pacing and timing in this is so expertly done that within a few pages, I was just in the story, and not analyzing anymore. And that's a hard thing to do to a fellow cartoonist, But there's a scene that really struck me with a syringe. And it's a scene you could have shown in 2 panels. Yeah. And instead you draw it out, and it makes this a very like poignant, dramatic scene. And it's a very like Hitchcock kind of approach.
I was riveted with that. Like, what's going to happen? What's going to...
Yeah. Because of
really going to do it. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And there's even like hand acting in it, which
Yeah.
is so good. And even the hands are kind of expressing an emotion in a really emotional scene. And it's also a misdirect, which I love. I'm not going to give anything away, but it's just like, I'm curious, like what kind of thinking goes into that to stretch out a moment, like, because again, I read a lot of cartoonists who would just do that in 2 panels.
Sure.
And what kind of thinking goes into timing and pacing when it comes to like a quiet moment like that again could be shown in 2 panels,
Right.
but you're showing it in multiple pages,
Right. Yeah, no, that syringe, that's probably what, half a page, or or like, it's I draw it out.
Well, it's that whole sequence pre-syringe too, it's just
Right.
Yeah.
It's boy, there's a lot that goes into thinking about that. One is, and this is something I think you and I, maybe on an Artcasters or maybe on my stream, I don't even remember, we've talked about it in the past. I am interested in trying to control time when I'm thinking about how I'm going to break a script into panels. So I think this isn't always the case, but roughly speaking, fewer panels feels faster, I think, to me and also the reader. More panels feels slower. And I did want to linger on that moment, which is why could you get the point across about, okay, the syringe is being uncapped and loaded and she's got it in her hand. You could probably do that in a panel, maybe 2, and you'd get there. But I want to, this is a dramatic moment. And I think there should be some anxiety with the reader about what's going to happen. And it's also a big emotional moment. Without spoiling anything, like, this is a very difficult thing this character is on the threshold of doing. Like, this is maybe the most difficult thing she'll ever do in her life. And as DvsM are character stories, it's like, well, this is where we're going to hold them. This is more important than maybe anything else that happens in this whole comic. Is this, at least when it comes to this character's development, this character's arc, like, this is where we want to spend time. If we're going to cut anywhere else, it's not going to be here because this is important.
And I can understand that too, because that choice and the way you do the hand acting, it's like you can read the thoughts of the character as they're going through it. Like, there's hesitation, there's like all these different emotions, and then finally you also show, no, she's a badass. Like, and I love that kind of twist where it's like, okay, there's this humanity and this empathy, but there's also like a character who's kind of like just gonna do her job and be badass.
I'll say she's a badass, but you also show her fear, and so it's not like one dimensional. Like, I'm just going to make this kick-ass girl character,
right?
And
it's not like it's not like a.
She's not Ripley from Aliens, Like, she's more Ripley from Alien. Yeah. she like, this is a person this is a normal person who's thrown into an extraordinary, terrifying, dangerous situation.
Yes.
And has to do what she can, and just make it like, and I really do imagine, especially in that last, third of the book, she's fully thinking like, this is probably it for me. Yeah. Like, this is like, but what am I going to do? And there's a little bit of recklessness to it and desperation to her actions in the end. But,
well, I love how clumsy the action is too. Yeah. Like, and that, I think Scott and I were talking about this after we both read it. We were curious how much of your day job informs some of the violent sequences because of the fact that they're so believable. Like, her actions, like, there's some damage that characters take in this book, and it's very realistic damage. Some of it's very unrealistic damage.
Right.
But
Yeah,
but
preface
still,
that.
even it's unrealistic. But it's like, if it were real, this is what it would look like, you know. And it's kind of very considered and thought out, and especially with the main character, there's just some like clumsy things that happen before and after that are so believable, and kind of heartbreaking. And it's just made me wonder how much of that is informed by what you do for a living.
And explain real quick what you do for a living, just so people.
So I'm a litigation graphics specialist. So I create visual aids for use in felony trials. Roughly speaking, like that can be something like maps or crime scene diagrams or illustrative diagrams trying to explain how like a breathalyzer works or how DNA odds are calculated or whatever. But in this case, what Josh is referencing is a lot of anatomical stuff, a lot of illustrating injuries, a lot of creating 3D models of crime scenes, or redrawing a crime scene or whatever. So yeah, through my work, I get to see what violence looks like, and I read a lot of stories about how the situation evolved, and now with ring cams and body cams and all this stuff everywhere, sometimes you're watching what this looks like. So it informs it greatly. It definitely. I think, just based on my experience, I know what violence looks like, real violence looks like, better than the average person. Now, but I think, and this is the important difference, I think, with DvsM, I think I'm actually going after something different with my violence. I don't think there's anything wrong with drawing Mortal Kombat violence or The Boys violence or Invincible violence, like whatever, like this kind of very over the top, cartoony, crazy, can be ghastly, can be gory, can be like a little shocking, but it's way this is operatic, it's big. But they're looking for a different effect on the audience. I'm looking for the violence in DvsM to be unsettling. I'm looking for it to be disturbing. I'm looking for it to be shocking or worrying or cringy, where you're like, oh my God, that would really hurt. Even if it's a little thing. And to do that, I think the way you do that is you show it what it really looks like, and you play it in a very straight, kind of clinical way. You don't overdo it. You show it what it would look like and how it would feel, and it's something that in every DvsM, there was always some little injury. There's sometimes some over the top injury. There's sometimes someone getting hit by a ray gun.
I was going to say, do you deal with a lot of ray guns in your
I don't deal with a lot of ray guns. Well, that's classified. But I do. In every DvsM, I always also have some kind of small injury that you probably can imagine. Yeah. Or maybe even you have had, like maybe like a hemorrhaged eye, or maybe like a chipped tooth, or a split lip, or a black eye, or there was a guy who gets a really gnarly finger injury in '97. Like these kinds of things where you may not be able to relate to getting hit by a ray gun or being mauled by a dinosaur or whatever, but there's injuries where it's like, oh, like it really does kind of, my hope is catch you in the pit of your stomach, where it's like, that's horrible. Like that would suck.
I feel like it'll
just by way of percentage, how many eye injuries do you deal with on a daily basis? Because that seems to be thematic.
Yeah, it does, right? I think that might just be my Quentin Tarantino foot thing. There's something about eye injuries that I think is unsettling. Yeah. And and what I like about eye injuries is a pet peeve of mine, especially in movies and comics and TV and stuff, are what I would call like glamorous injuries, like a little cut on the forehead with the blood that runs down the cheek, or like something that's almost kind of like pretty, like it looks cool. it looks awesome. You know, it's like an Indiana Jones injury.
Yeah. The Indiana Jones cut on. Oh, my pectoral muscles got injured, so now I need to show them off or whatever.
A little bruise. Yeah, you know, exactly. Where to me, I prefer injuries that, like I said, make you go like, "Ugh, that looks terrible." I like in terms of movies, I like. To me, the gold standard is like Chinatown. If you haven't seen it, Jack Nicholson's character gets his nose slashed about like halfway through the movie. Like someone puts a little switchblade in his nostril and goes like this. And for the rest of the movie, he has this absurd bandage on his nose and like this really gnarly looking set of stitches. I like that kind of stuff. Like, because that's stuff where you look at it and it's like, that doesn't look fun. That doesn't look cool. That doesn't look, that he doesn't, because it shouldn't. In my, it should be horrifying. Eye injuries. So on that note, eye injuries I think are almost impossible to blow off. Like there's something about the idea of an eye injury, or like a chipped tooth, or a split lip, or a compound fracture. That is like not like that's something that you can't think like, oh, like they'll be okay. Like it's something that makes you go, oh, that looks terrible.
I just love the fact that some of the I don't want to give anything away, but it's like some of the violence isn't in the actual confrontation, but just the traumatic response to the confrontation. Right. There's just moments that are so considered and human. And I think that is one of the great things for anybody watching this that hasn't given these books a chance. One of the really unique things about this book is it's taking on a subject matter that might have been touched before, but it's doing it in a way where it's humanizing things. It reminds me of, it wasn't surprising to me, Gary, that you're a big fan of Andor, because you're kind of doing the Andor treatment to like what your subject matter is, where you're taking some kind of absurd premises, but then you're humanizing it and making it really believable. And it's those little moments where somebody, makes a mistake, like, and it's not a mistake that's like caused by an evil villain. It's a mistake caused by adrenaline or just very believable things. And I think with that mixed with the dialogue that Scott was mentioning before, that's so convincing, it's like it just creates this very compelling, empathetic moment for the characters, and it makes the stakes really high in the stories, which makes it really tense and fun to read.
Yeah,
thank you.
All of the books have these moments where it's just could be just characters talking or whatever, and then it just goes off the rails, and that's kind of a reoccurring theme through most of these books. And the pacing is so different, even in one book. I mean, it's just like, oh, we're here now and everything. But all that upfront character development, everything, once you get in that position where these characters are in peril, I mean, you just care so much for them and you worry for them. And sometimes it doesn't turn out too well for them. And it's even like the non-human characters. So it's I mean, you really feel for them, and you don't know. I mean, you don't know because Gary's not opposed to just killing kids or whatever. So
killing Boy Scouts.
It's kind of
next
like,
issue. It might be Weeblos or Cub Scouts.
Yeah. You never know. Yeah. You never know who's going to make it through, or if they do, how they're going to be scarred, whether emotionally or physically or what. So it's just. So I have a sort of,
or if they'll get disappeared by the government, or they'll return, you never know. You never know.
So we talked a little bit about misdirections, and I was wondering if this was purposeful, because it did affect the way that I went into this story. And sort of preconceived notions, but so there is an animal character in the story.
Yes,
on the back,
a big character. Like I would say, probably the second character in the story. Yeah.
So on the back, you have some little warnings, and one of them is animal harm.
Right.
And I'm wondering, and I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but I'm wondering if that particular thing was purposely put in there to make you suspect or think something could happen to a particular character, or what was that?
Well, it's
because knowing that warning and going to that story, I was concerned.
here's what I'll say. Like, I feel like every bit of this is potentially me trying to tell you a story. So yes, like there is maybe a little bit of a device there, knowing that once you see that warning, well, what is he talking about? This was something I enjoy, the misdirect on the parental warnings. Like, for example, way back in '75, I had partial nudity as and on the blurb, you see this very comic booky kind of hourglass girl with like the black bars kind of covering her up, and I loved the idea that someone is going to be like, oh boy, you know, and they'll be reading, and then they'll see, when you actually do see the nudity, sorry, it's like a naked dude in the kitchen, and you see his balls. Sorry, you know, and like, but I just kind of, I knew with '79, yes, as soon as you see that animal harm, which is a real thing, there are animals harmed in this book.
Yes,
once
there
this
are.
animal character comes in, like, now you know, like, oh no, like anything could happen, and you also know, like, everything with the plot leading up to that point, that perhaps this character's days are already numbered. You know, so it's, I want that kind of, it's just a way for me to switch every lever. Like, you know what the main character's intent is. You know what all the story has been up to this point. You know that, as Thomas said there, I will George R.R. Martin my characters from time to time.
That's a better example.
And then, like, there's this character you meet, this animal character that's, I would like to think, kind of not what you expected, kind of lovable, kind of like, and it's like, oh, he's not going to do anything to that, is he? Like, you know, and you don't know. Of course, that's okay. Sure.
I was curious about that. If that was me,
all's fair. All's fair. If I can kind of create an expectation. Same with the trailer, by the way. There's misdirects in the trailer that I did. You know, where you might expect one thing by watching that, and that's not exactly how it goes.
So one quick thing I want to bring up is, there's a conversation at the very beginning of the comic, and it's kind of establishing some basic plot stuff, some workplace politics type stuff.
Yes.
But then there's a character reveal, and you instantly reveal kind of a character flaw in our main character at the very beginning. And it's like an interesting subplot, and it also creates a connection with the two characters that are that are talking at the beginning, where you're like, by the end, you know, like, anyhow, it all pays off.
Are you talking about the relationship between Dr. Wagner and her boss?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
And you reveal like some character flaws within the character just in the conversations. Like they're very hot-headed, right? Very like
I think she's got a lot of flaws.
Yeah, 100%.
I would argue she's the most flawed character I've written in a DvsM yet. Even more so than Jenny, and Jenny was a mess. So, you know,
But what's interesting is you reveal a lot of those flaws, but there's also like a plot kind of twist in there with the relationship of the boss and the employee.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that's thrown in at quite kind of close to the end, and it almost reminded me of Psycho a little bit, and I was wondering, was that an influence at all?
No,
just
that
in setting that premise at the beginning. No,
it was a couple. I feel this is just a very light spoiler, so I'm fine talking about it.
Oh, okay.
Basically, the main character of this story, Dr. Veronica Wagner, she's like an evolutionary developmental biologist. She's doing genetic research for the government in a top secret program. Her boss is like a PhD who's directing. He's herding all the cats of all these different scientists working on this particular problem that, you know, they're studying. And it's revealed in almost kind of a throwaway thing that they're having an affair.
Yeah.
I did that for a couple reasons. One, I wanted them to have a very kind of frank, real, almost argument. And I felt like if there is some kind of a personal relationship here, like, you know, this is not a conversation a subordinate's necessarily going to have with her boss, you know, and especially someone who feels low on the totem pole. A lot of the story leading up to that, you get the impression like she's sort of the weird one, you know, she's not taken super seriously maybe before the start of this story. I was like, well, this will justify them being a little more raw with each other, especially her being raw with him. The other thought
is one question before you say it, in case this is one of them. Is one of them also just to kind of establish the era in time?
Of course.
Yeah, because I felt like that was a very like 70s thing. I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Very. And I think it also fits her character. I mean, the way I'll get into this, like I do intend eventually to do I do character creation and analysis videos for all the main characters for DvsM. I will do one for Veronica. I think at heart, Veronica is a materialist and not particularly like it's the 70s. I think she's sort of a practical kind of vaguely amoral person. I don't think a workplace affair is the end of the world for her. You know, I don't know. It seemed to fit, but more so first reason was this allows them to do a more interesting dialogue with Peter. The second thing was I wanted to do some kind of light. I didn't want to do a whole comic about it, but I wanted to do some kind of light nod towards how the reality of having a job where you can never tell anyone in your life what you do. It's top secret. She's probably going home to her boyfriend or husband or whatever he is. I never really decided. And saying that she works on like, you know, animal research or something. Like she's probably she's lying to him about everything in her life. You know, she's lying to everybody all the time. I think that would, first of all, train you, some people, not all people, train some people to feel a little comfortable with a level of deception at all times. And I think also it would create a closeness with the people that you don't have to have this cover story with at all times.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah.
So to me, it seemed very logical. Like, you know, like, yeah, why not? You know, he's attractive, she's attractive. She's brilliant, and she sort of respects him. Like, yeah, sure, okay. You know, maybe there's been some. It's 1979.
Yeah. It also, you know, makes the stakes a little higher too, which is great for the characters. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So what else? So one of the things that I liked about this issue is that because you're sort of in the middle now, or you've wrapped up the middle of the story.
Yes.
And you know, there's a lot of questions that people have, obviously. Yeah. And there's some, I mean, you kind of see kind of what's the direction some things are going, and you learn, okay, well, this is where this came to be, or this is the origin of this or whatever. But it opens up a lot more questions, and to me, it was just like, and it got the wheels in my head turning, because questions I didn't even know I had. Like, so for instance, why dinosaurs? And previous to that, I just thought, just from other media I've seen, okay, well, they want to take aliens and then they want to weaponize them because they're vicious and ferocious. But it made me think that there's probably more to it than just that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I'm not exactly sure what that is. I don't know. I can theorize. You know, I don't know. I could throw a theory that maybe they originally.
I'm not going to confirm or deny anything.
No, don't. Maybe they originally came at the time of the dinosaur, and that has something to do with it.
Maybe all the dates upside down spell out boobies like a calculator when you add them up, and that's why the aliens are really invading. Just throwing that one out there.
Yeah.
No, I guess not. I don't know. I see a lot of sixes. I see a lot of sixes. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, so it's a like a satanic thing now we got going.
Oh, snap. It's the end of the world.
Yeah. Yes.
I
mean, that's the fun. I feel like that's one of the fundamental questions. It's not the ultimate question of DvsM, but one of the big ones that I'm gradually working toward is.
But it's cool because It's cool because I didn't even think that was a thing that I was curious about, because I just thought, oh, it's just as simple as, oh, we need something, massive and vicious to destroy these guys. But now it's like, oh no, it's probably Gary's a little bit smarter than that, and there's going to be something more to it than that.
No, it's not that simple, and that's part of why in this one I made a point of showing the military using canines, and you get to see in real time how do the dogs do with the aliens, and then how did the dinosaurs do with them.
Right.
And there's a dramatic difference, so it shows that it's not just like, well, there's something about, like, some people, and I remember originally where it's like there's something there, it's something about that they're so primitive that there's this gap. Aliens can't, they're trying to speculate, or it's like they're perfectly tuned to deal with conventional human weapons, but if you, like an animal, they don't know how to deal with. Well, if that was the case, then the dogs would probably do pretty well. So no, there is something to it. I will tease this. There is one page in particular.
You said that before, and I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, there's a page in this where two alien characters are having a conversation, and it is untranslated alien language. If you could read that, it would reveal a lot. It would really reveal a lot. I don't know what's going on.
Right. I'm going to hire a linguist or something now.
Bombs in their conversation. But like in terms of when the reader will actually, this will all become like very clear. You're like this. This is part of why you got to stay with me. So
I like it. Okay, I have a real spoilery question.
Sure.
So just warning everyone.
Alert.
We are doing spoilers
Spoiler
now?
alert.
For about how long do you think? If
sorry, what?
Are there
how long
more
do you think
spoiler
we'll be in spoiler territory?
Oh, we'll be in spoiler territory for about 5 minutes. I'd say 5 to 10 minutes.
Guys, if you want to mute it for 5 minutes, if you're worried about spoilers.
You know what? I can ask it in a non-spoilery way.
Okay.
There's a decision you make around page 46.
I gotta grab a book. Let's see here.
Yeah.
Yes.
On the next page, and then the preceding spread, and something with the page numbers that I'm curious about.
Yes.
It leaves an impact
before, and I didn't see it.
It leaves an impact that's wonderful on a storytelling level.
So that's another example of me playing with the medium. Having fun. This is the first one. Now I've always done this. Like in 75, there's at least one example of page number silliness, and an example of like panels starting to kind of drip away, and like
you got that whole psychedelic page number thing going on.
There's an element of that. I do like playing with the medium, and yes, there is some page number hijinks,
shenanigans. Cool.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that. I heard you mention that, but I didn't pick up on it until just Josh.
So I was curious about the page number. So this is kind of the thing. Is the only reason for that gap is that for the storytelling on this particular story, or is there a further reason potentially, or is that I cannot answer?
It's just it's completely it's
playing with time again, right?
In this book.
Yeah, okay, cool. Because I was thinking, you brilliantly also opened up the possibility for a subplot that you could introduce at any point in time you want.
So, like,
you could literally fill in the blank. But I thought that was a great device. This one, and this actually goes back a little bit to like drawing out moments. The simplest answer, without getting too specific about it, the page numbers.
It's mostly indicating time to the reader. So that's I think that, and you'll see it when you see it when you read it. But it's great. A time that was that kind of silliness with the page numbers is a time wink.
Okay, I figured there might be more to it, but I also kind of assumed probably it was just for the impact.
It's just that in this case,
that is yet another thing I don't know if I've seen in comics. And that's pretty cool. So
That
again,
would
if
be
you guys
so
are watching this, there's things that I think are, even if they've been done before, there's some things I haven't seen that Gary's doing sequentially to further these stories, you know.
I'm trying to have fun with the medium, you know, in a big way. And I'm trying to, I've said this in my own stream. I have no aspiration to redefine comics or do something really avant-garde, but I like the idea within the kind of fairly staid constraints I've made for myself, where I do try to play it pretty straight, you know, with the way, you know, there are panels. There are dialogue bubbles. Like I obey most of the conventions of comics, but within a lot of those rules, especially when the story calls for it, I do enjoy dismissing or stretching or playing with them. I actually really enjoyed it as something that the first thing I heard back from you guys on that, the intentional blank pages. I just thought that was fun. You know, I just liked, and by the way, a little ridiculous to be paying Comics Wellspring to be adding pages to your book that don't have any art on them. But it's, you know, I just thought I liked the idea of that. I thought it would be kind of
it's great.
I think it's a good call. I also, let's see, I think Jim Lujan will kick me if I don't actually ask this question for him.
Okay.
He keeps mentioning Victory Meatloaf.
So the rest of this year will be spent kind of gradually doing my prep for doing DvsM number 4. I'm not going to be drawing it this year. My intention is to start drawing it next year, probably after the holidays, at latest maybe spring.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, it's like, well, what do I want to do? Just, you know, and Josh, you understand this better than anyone right now. When you're in the midst of this never-ending, giant, ambitious project, all you can kind of do is fantasize about all the stuff you're going to do when you're done. Like I was just Dave, you're like, what am I going to, oh my God, I'm going to do all the crazy, stupid things that I never have time for now because I'm drawing all the time. I'll be talking about it more on my stream. I'm going to do a small series of videos, probably starting in a month or two once I get clear of Phoenix Fan Fusion. It's going to be called Loafing About with Gary Hodges, where I want to try all the best meatloafs in Phoenix and talk about it a rating. That's just a random, it's going to be 1 out of 5.
Gary, if you do this,
loafing, it'll be 1 out of 5 Louis. On what I think about, I have a list of restaurants. I'm going to try all of them.
Is Vogue?
If you
Vogue
do
Bistro
this, you
and
need
Surprise on your
meatloaf
list
on the soundtrack.
Is Vogue Bistro and Surprise on your list?
Do they have a good meatloaf?
They have a killer meatloaf.
I'm writing it down. Hold on, I've got my list right here.
Nice.
Wait.
And I think you need to have Jim Lujan do a parody meatloaf song for the soundtrack.
I asked him if he could do it
to happen.
Yeah. So what was the name of it?
It's Vogue, like the Madonna and like the magazine. Vogue Bistro.
Vogue Bistro.
Yeah, and it'll set you back a little bit, but it's not a cheap restaurant.
Hey,
you gotta Vogue. You can strike a pose and there's nothing to it, you know.
Well, there we go. I've added one to my list. This is my. Jim was like, then Jim was like, if I was going to do something like that, we need to add the pressure on Jim. He said, if I was going to do something like that, I would want to know which place had the best biscuits, and I would call it Kickin' Biscuits with Jim Lujan. And I was like, now you have to. I want to see that. I think
you guys need to do it in tandem, so it's like a Food Network series.
Kickin' Biscuits and Loafing About with Jim and Gary.
I want to see that.
That makes me so envious and makes me want to finish my book.
The
problem is that I'm noticing is usually we'll end up just making another book.
Yes.
Yeah.
So before we get to our Boy Scout stories, and I was going to say, before we get to our Boy Scout stories and start closing things out, are there any other questions having to do with DvsM that we want to address before we
did we want to have a spoiler section?
I'm fine.
Well, we kind of touched on spoilers, but yeah, we can.
Is this the official spoiler section?
I'm just worried if we told people to come back and then they're just now coming back and they come back in spoiler territory, but that whatever. The rest of the show, I guess, it'll be spoilers for a little while.
It'll be spoilers until the end when you hear the wonderful amazing, unrevealed yet story of why Gary wants to kill Boy
Well,
Scouts.
we'll have to show because they won't know. They're not going to hear it at all.
All right,
They're
so
going to be.
when we
we'll have-
wave our hands like this,
Well,
we'll
if
be
we
out of
wave like
spoiler.
this, actually no, like this.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
come
that
back.
makes more
You
sense.
can
Yeah,
come back.
okay.
We're fine. Yeah, there we go. All right.
Oh,
All
I
right.
don't know why I had that.
all right. We are now in spoiler.
We're in
territory.
Spoilerville for DvsM. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing I particularly want to spoil. So, but go ahead, Corey.
Oh no, I just wanted to talk about. Hold on, let me just. I was just going to do this really quick. Let me just
Okay.
put this across the bottom here.
Oh, are we going to add a banner? That would be a good.
Yeah. There we go. Add banner. And show.
There we go. All right.
Oh, there we go.
Now,
Okay,
this is
so
good. All right.
because I have been looking for my other copies of the other things, so I haven't been able to cross-reference. But this is the first time we've seen gas, like some sort of psychological gas.
No,
as a weapon,
no.
or that was
No.
that
75 was the first. Actually, it's been in all of them, but we haven't seen anybody. No one was affected by it in 97.
Okay.
There was a so-called befuddler, so those are the gas units on the field and using the gas mostly to obscure, mostly for cover, visual cover.
Yeah, because I remember the cover.
Yeah, in 75, Ruben, well, everybody really, but Ruben in particular gets hit by the gas and hallucinates. Is hallucinating while he's having a fight with one of the aliens. So
Okay. Because I was looking for my other copies, but I owned those before the flood.
Sure.
Not the antediluvian, but my house flooding, and I tore apart my entire studio, so I don't know where they are. So I was gonna go cross-reference.
This is the first time we see the gas used in the way that I always envisioned it, where it would be used in combat to kind of create confusion and fratricide on the side of the humans. Like, you do this and everyone starts tripping and they don't know who the enemy is anymore. They don't know where they are. And that makes it very easy for them, like we see in this one, to kind of move in and just start zapping people while they're helpless. So.
Yeah. And because the character I modeled for, spoilers, so I can talk about this.
Yeah.
He gets killed by the dog. The dogs seem to react differently than the humans do.
Well, he doesn't get killed by the dog. He gets pulled down by the dog. But then the aliens come up and zap both him and the dog.
Yeah, so he dies.
Right.
Saying his last words to his buddy.
Yeah, it affects the dogs a little differently. It just kind of makes the dogs more feral and a little.
Because the guy goes down the hall. He gets tagged with the gas. He comes back and starts mumbling about his dad.
Yes, he's confused and lost, and he's got a gun still. So
he still has a gun. I thought it was interesting that they just shot him.
Yes.
Because
so my headcanon about that is, so this is 4 years into hostilities, and I think the training at this point is one befuddled guy with a machine gun is extraordinarily dangerous. And like, if he's advancing on your position and you can't get him to respond or recognize or drop his weapon, like, no more chances. My imagination is that in previous years, there has been like, let's try to grab him, let's try to do something. And lots of people have gotten killed that way. So now, like, the order is you give them a chance, you tell them to drop the weapon. If they're not going to do it, you shoot them. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that was my main. I was just interested that the human was confused. The dog was like vicious and attacking.
Aggressive. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It affects, I mean, some of it is just like an animal versus human thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It affects the dogs a little differently, but the dog thing was mostly inspired by my brother worked briefly at animal control, and he quickly quit because he just couldn't do it anymore. It was too upsetting for him. But he used to talk about how shocking it would be to see like pets, like normal, loving, wonderful pets, like when they're really scared or really cornered, or you've kept them in a kennel for a few days, they can be really weird and dangerous. And so like this dog that previously you were taking pictures of with the baby, like now can be something completely different. I kind of like that idea of like maybe when the gas hits them, for some reason, they just go aggressive and strange. You know, they just revert into something else. So, which with humans, a more complicated brain, more complicated consciousness, like it just gets more hallucinatory and confused.
And were the dogs also to establish like the way that different species and animals might respond to the gas? Like
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to show that it's a little different, but also to show that it doesn't seem to do anything to the dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And you see that in 97, you have a couple species of dinosaurs stomping around in the gas, and it doesn't seem to do anything to them. And then in that room that Opie and Veronica are in, that room is like clouds of it hanging on the ceiling, and Opie seems unaffected.
Yeah.
So,
It's so great. I love it.
And then I thought this was an interesting touch. As we're looking at this,
yes.
so there I am getting
There you are.
pulled down by the dog, right?
Yeah.
But then as soon as the aliens show up, the dog reverts back to like a very clear, like that's my man.
Like turning to look at kind of Mm-hmm.
Because he has even, and I thought this is great gesture of that. He has that just from that little thing. He's got that kind of like attentive, waiting for orders kind of thing that dogs get when they recognize like this is the person that I've trained with. You know, like I'm used to them giving me commands.
Yeah,
you know,
or like a pack mate. Like there is something about there's sort of that's something I in my head canon. I don't know if that would always be taken for granted in Universal, which is why the aliens then go to kill the dogs as well. Mm-hmm. Just as like, it's not like they're friendly to them now, but I think that is an example. This is another thing drawn from me just watching animals. So for example, Louis, this stray cat we adopted, former tomcat. If a cat comes to the door, he loses his mind. He howls, he gets up on it, like he's just completely vicious. There's a gray fox in the neighborhood that when it comes by, Louis just stares at it. He doesn't seem to know what to make of it because I think he just never seen a fox. He doesn't he doesn't have any. When he goes through his catalog of how do you deal with this, there's nothing in there. Mm-hmm. I think that's a little bit like these dogs are seeing an alien, and it's just different enough from a person that there's this momentary kind of like that. You can picture that dog head cock of like I don't even know what I'm looking at. I can't even recognize it necessarily as.
And the smell's not normal,
Smell's not normal, and also in my canon, the aliens, which is something we might get into later, are more kind of closer to plants than animals. Like they're more. There's a photosynthesis kind of thing going on with them, where so the dogs are there's nothing about them that reads normally, that they know how to react to.
I love it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm anxious to kind of see you dive more into that because there are similar animals living today that sort of resemble some of the creatures in this story. So, I'm just kind of curious what it is about these ones in particular. So,
yes,
yeah. So,
yeah,
you've left us with a lot lot of questions, which I think is job well done.
We're only halfway through, so I would hope so.
Right.
Yeah. I also want to throw out there just the fact that, like, again, I really want to give credit to the fact that this is not an action comic without consequence. Like, it's like this is a if Dinosaurs versus Marsbots were to have a fist fight scene, the character's not going to walk off. Like, even the victor's not going to walk off. Just walking normally, they're getting in a fist fight. Like it's gonna cause damage, and I love that about. I like the fact that while you're using violence to perpetuate a story, and like it's definitely a tension, it is kind of a fun horror story too. But at the same time, I love the fact that you give it kind of its proper weight, which I think is really differentiates it from a lot in the market. Yeah.
Well, and I appreciate you pointing out sort of the clumsiness of Veronica, you know, where she's like, and she's not a soldier. She's, you know, she doesn't know what she's doing. So I wanted that fight to look just sloppy and confused and panicked and you know, like, and she's getting hurt as much as, like, you know, it's just not, it's someone who has no idea what they're doing, just making a go of it,
just defending their life.
And I think something I really enjoyed with that, which is sort of to me a related note, is the chronology of the story accumulating on her. So like she's crying and you see the mascara streaks, which persist all the way to the end. Like, and then there's like, she's, you know, cutting something. So like she's got blood on her hands and then she's like, someone touches her face while they're bleeding and she's got blood on her face and her hair's getting pulled. So now it's all messy and like all these little things accumulating, and she's like hurting her mouth and all, you know, so by the end you see written on her everything that's happened to her. Yeah, exactly. I really loved that idea, but also that's, to me, it's like, well, it's like the same thing about the stakes of violence. Like, I think this is how that is meaningful, is to show that you don't just get up and brush yourself off and like, phew, that was close. And like, you know, and go on with your life. Like there's a visual representation of like, she's never going to be the same after this.
Can I ask?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, this might be more spoilery than you want to get to, but I have a theory.
Okay.
So when the dinosaurs were on the Earth, the atmosphere was drastically different than it is. Oh, you're smiling, so I might be onto something. It was drastically different than it is today.
No, I'm just smiling because I wasn't expecting that. So yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I mean, the oxygen content in the air was significantly higher back then, and so like almost to the point where humans would have just been like almost just high. Like if we were to travel back in time, it would be like we would OD on oxygen.
Yeah.
So is there something connected to that and them not being affected with the gas? Because I have one of two things happening. Either they come back and they're going like they've engineered these dinosaurs to like bring them back, Jurassic Park style, whatever. You would have to, which is something Jurassic Park never addresses. You would have to do something to address the fact that they're huge creatures, very muscular. They're going to metabolize a lot of oxygen in their bloods as they're kind of doing these types of things. And they would be like, I mean, like when I first moved from like sea level in California to like altitude of Idaho, it's a 5,000 foot difference. And then I've hiked like things that are like 14,000 feet, 15,000 feet, even in just those elevation changes, which is not insignificant, but nothing like the difference between dinosaur times and now. It's fatiguing. So to have those dinosaurs to be able to like physically exert themselves, I'm assuming they've been altered in some way to be able to like adapt to that.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if that alteration has something to do with their immunity to the befuddling gas.
No, so I wasn't saying yes, saying like, yes, that's happened. And yes, it's like, I follow. The way I'm imagining it, yes, I did consider that. And because I'm nuts about this stuff, my assumption is like, you know what, that would be a problem if you had a time machine and you popped dinosaurs over and they had to adjust.
Right.
Then it would probably be fine if you were raising them from the embryonic stage. They would adjust whatever. So like that's the oxygen level thing. I feel like that's not a non-issue. As for why the gas doesn't work on them, I'm only going to say one sentence about it. It's not. It just invites questions, and I refuse to answer the obvious follow-up questions. The gas is designed to not work on something like that.
Ah, okay.
The aliens don't want the gas to work on something like that.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense.
Interesting.
I love it.
All right, so I've got one more question, Gary.
Yes.
What do the aliens want? What do they want?
You're gonna have to hang in there till
No.
the last one. Yeah, right.
All right. Do any other questions? Do we want to get into our little stories here and close this thing out?
I do want to get a little window into the finish line. How do you feel? Because I'm at that midway point. You've obviously seen my vlogs recently where I've done vlogs called comic books suck.
Yes, I did see
so
that.
on.
I enjoyed that title. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm in the thick of just the like. I kind of hate this process, but I'm doing it. How does it feel at the end where you get that proof of concept of like, okay, all this struggle actually got you a final thing again, and you've done it a third time?
Okay, are we done with spoilers? We want to pull the spoilers off just in case.
Are we? Yeah, I think I don't know. Are we done with spoilers?
I don't have any more spoilers.
Okay.
Oh, I have one. Crap! I'm gonna give it away about the musical that shows up in the middle.
Oh. No.
We're done with the spoilers, but you will have to ask your question again in case somebody didn't hear it because they were avoiding spoilers.
Yes,
we
that's
all need
true.
to do this in case people are watching.
Yes. Oh, that's right. Here we go.
Right.
Yeah. There we go. All right.
We can do Frank Salazar's
where he finds the waving guy, or when he finds an excuse to flex or whatever he's doing. Yeah.
That's true. So, so that's a question. So, it's like, it is really hard, kind of like this, right there, really solid, like that, to finish a comic. No. Sorry, I had to flex for Frank Salazar. Which I know is that lost us half of our viewers. They're like, oh my gosh, that actually went down. Like the muscle actually inverted rather than. But anyhow, it's just comics are hard. You've done 3 now. Yes. How does it feel as like a proof of concept to like see a third executed, that you can kind of run the gauntlet like a third time?
It's a lot. Right now with DvsM, all of them together, there's 160 pages of DvsM. So it's something. I don't know if you guys, I hope you guys read the thank you page because I call you all out in it. But like there was something I said in the thank you page, it just makes me think of that it somehow gets harder and easier. It's easier in that you start to feel some confidence in your ability to do it. Like I've done 160 pages. I've seen a book through. I've come up with an idea and I've shaped it into a script and I've worked out what my page layouts are going to be and I've done all my research and I've drawn it and done the cover and I've got it printed and put it out there. Like I know I can do it. I don't have any fear like I might have early on about, oh my God, I've never drawn anything like this before. How am I going to do it? Like I feel like, even though of course I haven't drawn everything, I know that it doesn't matter that I've never drawn it before. Yeah. I know that I have some ability and I can make it happen. I can get the thing done. It gets harder, paradoxically, in that as you get more confident, you get better, and I think you start seeing more opportunities to stretch and push. And so you're never at a point where it's never a defined problem where you just get better and better and better at solving that problem. It's more of it's art, it's if you get better and better at cooking, it's not like, wow, I'll never be afraid to do a grilled cheese again. You do a few grilled cheeses and you're like, well, why don't I try making something else? And why don't I get Julia Child's book? And why don't I, like you're always seeing like the farther shore. You're always seeing the higher peak. Yeah. And that's just, it's never getting easier. You're always, I think if maybe you care about making something the best it can be, you're always evaluating how much can I carry?
Yeah.
And like I did this one, I feel stronger now. So I think I can carry a little more for the next one, you know? So it's never getting easier. Like the difficulty is just flat. It does feel good to be halfway through. And I always felt like once I did the first one, like, well, I'm on the roller coaster now. Like I feel like I'm on the little mine cart. And now that I've started, I guess I'm going to see this through. But there's something about that halfway point that really does make you think it's more likely that this will all get done than not. Like you know, and I do believe the hardest stuff, the hardest new challenges are behind me. And I do think like the longest DvsMs are behind me. I can't imagine, I know what the stories are for the last three, and I might jinx myself, but I can't imagine any of them being as long as 79. So
quote him in 2 years.
We'll see. So, but no, look, I mean, I feel your pain, and I've been watching. I feel like I just feel like I can relate a lot to a lot of the things you've been saying lately about being in the midst of a very long-term project where you still have a lot left. Like I get it. I remember when I set out on this one, I had felt like 97 was a bit of a slog. And I really wanted 79. I just wanted to enjoy the process more. Yeah. I wanted to really just have the fun of just being able to make something that I was excited to make. And I was mostly successful. Like especially compared to last time. I enjoyed this more. But it wasn't like there was still really tough times. And I think my current thinking on it is that's okay. Yeah. And hard things are hard. And if it was easy, I wouldn't be doing what I talked about before, where it's like, I feel like I'm better now, so I should try to take on more. It would be easy if I wasn't doing that. If I was like, let's just settle for about the level of work I was doing, you know, with 75. Like, let's not try to do anything fun. Let's not try to push. Let's not try to be more ambitious with the drawing. Let's not do the plaid jacket. Let's not, you know, like that then it would get easier and easier and probably, and I also probably wouldn't be as proud of it. Yeah. And that's something I can say about 79. 79 was tough. It was exhausting. It felt long. And I'm definitely taking time off from drawing for the rest of this year. But I'm proud of it. You know, I think it's my best work. I don't know how the audience is going to feel. I don't, you know, but I think it's, like I said on the thank you page, the most DvsM-y of the DvsMs. It's the most what I was setting out to do with these. And I hope I can say that for everyone to come. Yeah. You know, that the next one will be, okay, now this is my favorite and the most, and the one I'm most proud of. Okay, now the next one. But it's tough. And like, you've probably heard my conversations with Christopher and Jim, where I see them and they seem sort of like joyful, playful, breezy, easy artists, which is something that I have trouble relating to. I think you and I are more similar. And where it's like there is a level, it's a cliche, but there's a level of angst in the process with me. But I do love it. Yeah, and that's the thing. I could never think of not doing it. Yeah. And I feel like, to me, it's a tired analogy, but sometimes analogies are tired because they're true. It's the marathon. Like, ask me at mile 17 if I'm having fun. You know, I've never done a marathon, by the way. But ask me at mile 17 if I'm having fun, I'm going to be like, F no. Like, this is hard. I'm tired. I would have preferred to sleep in today. I want pancakes. But when you finish, you're like, I feel proud of myself. I'm glad I did that. And maybe I'll be ready to do one again once I recoup.
Yeah, and I finally figured out because we keep using analogies of weightlifting or like marathons and stuff like that. And I was realizing we need a more appropriate analogy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
and I finally think I've thought of one, which is because I do kind of wonder, like, every time I'm midway through a graphic novel, I'm like, why am I do it? Like, why do I do this? And then I know when I finish, I'm going to do another one. It's like a level of insanity. And I've thought about it a lot, and I think that part of what drives us is it's kind of the same thing that causes you to hit hard on the video game level. Like, it's not going to be breezy if you're playing a challenging video game and you do it on the hard setting, but all serious gamers who love games will do that because nothing else counts.
I don't want to put in the invincibility code. Like, I want to actually like have some challenge. Like, I want to be tested, and I want to rise to the occasion. You know,
which means there's going to be moments of cussing at your screen and being like, "What the heck? This is the 10th time I've played this level, and I can't beat it. It's annoying." But then you'll beat it, and it's like, and sometimes that level you have to play 20 times to like beat are some of the most fun you'll have, because when you finally beat it, you get to own the machine. Like, you're like, that's right, I did it. That's right.
I did
Who's
that.
the best?
Like, I did, I did that. Pulled it off. No, I think that's good. It's a similar. It's all in the same, I think, family of it. You know, and as long as Jim, it's funny. Jim asked me the other day. I hope he doesn't mind me saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, Jim. He was saying, he was talking about how we're just always we're looking for the next thing. We love to work, and even when we're relieved to be done, we're always like, my head is already, I've got a pile of books here that I need to read to do my research for the next one.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about it for I've been thinking about all of them for a long time, but now I'm really thinking about the next one. And even though I'm still tired and I'm not ready to start drawing, like, I know I will. And in some ways I'm looking forward to it. Not a lot, because I'm still tired, but in some ways.
Yeah.
And he's, he never stops. He does a movie and he puts it out, and within weeks, he's on the next thing. And
I have that in common with him.
And he's like, do you think we have a problem? and I said, and I mean this very earnest, is like, look, I know people, or have known people, who are just baristas, and they're living in a studio apartment, and the floor is covered in paint, and they've got stacks of canvas, and their life is their work. Everything. And I look at that and I don't think like, no, see, that's too far. We're fine. That's not my lesson. My lesson is like, I think that's very romantic and cool. Yeah. I think it's very cool that you've completely poured yourself into this thing that you're passionate about. So I'm maybe the wrong person to ask. Like, I don't know. It makes me happy. I enjoy doing it, and I like that it's hard. So I don't know.
I love that.
All right. Do we have any other questions, or we want to get into our little stories here?
Oh yeah, we got to hear the Cub Scout stories.
So first up, let me lead it where now I gotta find this.
Corey, are you're monetized, right?
Yep.
So if you guys can, you should kick in super chats for these stories. I'm just saying, it might not be a bad thing.
I'm eager to hear Scott's Cub Scout.
So Christopher wants to know if there is, in the second issue, if there is a Boy Scout warning. There is no warning for anything harmful to children.
Harm to scouts.
Gary doesn't care. Gary doesn't care enough to put a warning. No. And why is that, Gary?
Yeah.
Why is that? Tell us your story about Boy Scouts.
First of all, there is a graphic violence warning. Okay, so that's a big umbrella.
But in fairness, graphic violence can also include animal harm, or where is it?
It can, but some people are very I didn't realize. I thought people would be more sensitive to animal harm than some off-screen Boy Scout massacre. But apparently, a lot of people, of Jim Luhans of the world, are very concerned about those scouts.
A lot of Luhans get really upset by this. They're
very sensitive. Those Luhans, they like Boy Scouts. Let me tell you. But so. No, there's okay. So here's the short answer. There's no reason. You gotta have stakes. The aliens are bad. They're dangerous. Like that's I like the idea of them coming across a camp of kids and just.
Oh, I was doing that just to lead you into the story.
Yes, but So I was thinking though, like, do I have any latent, angry feelings about Scouts? And this is all I could come up with. This is all 100% a true story. I was a Cub Scout. Whatever age one's normally a Cub Scout, I would say is between like 1st and 3rd grade. And we were doing a play. where all the parents showed up for it. And the play was the first Cub Scouts on the moon. And we all had to individually make our own spacesuits. They were mostly cardboard covered in tinfoil, I remember. I remember the helmet was like a box where I cut, sort of a circle out of the front and did saran wrap on the inside, covered it with tinfoil. So I had a helmet. And when we were starting the play, we're sitting in these chairs. We're in our ship on our way to the moon talking about scouting or whatever our terrible lines were. I had the actor instinct, that when we're in the spaceship, the helmet is in my lap. And when they say like we are commencing our landing on the moon, I put my helmet on. I was very proud of myself, really putting myself in the mind of a Cub Scout astronaut. Of course, I probably wouldn't be wearing a helmet in the suit, but when you go to get out, you put on your helmet. So then we had our thing where we got out and then we talked to a moon man about the scouts, and we got our polite applause from the parents. And afterward, backstage, the lead scout, I don't remember his name. I remember he's like, Gary, why did you have your helmet off when we were in the ship? Did you forget to put it on? He was totally disgusted with me. And I was just stunned. Now, I was 8 years old or something. I couldn't really appreciate all this anger and hostility. I know inside I was thinking I was making brilliant acting choices. You don't even understand my work. You're not an artist. You're not an interesting person. I bet you're the least of all your parents' kids. And furthermore, you always smell like crackers. That was I think at the time I was just like, well, but I thought, and he was already off it. He had moved on to something else. All I can imagine is that I'm still very angry at him. Very,
nice.
very angry. And I was like, you know what? Someday, maybe 40 years later, I'm going to do a comic. And there's going to be Cub Scouts. And
one of them's going to look like you.
There's going to be a reckoning.
So you guys,
now.
If you want to know what this incident, the guy in the incident looked like, you should pick up the second issue of
DvsM 97,
and that's a nice portrait.
Yes, yeah. So that's that's the best guess I have on why the Scouts had to die.
So now Scott is going to reveal why the last issue of Young and Dead will have some Scout atrocities as well.
No,
so Scott,
Scott, you weren't the lead Scout, were you? Were you the same guy? Do you remember? Do you have a fuzzy memory of chastising a little boy about not wearing his helmet?
No, I feel like Scott also might have been the guy who took the roll of quarters at the arcade. I feel like there's a narrative.
I love that we're
here
casting Scott as every boyhood nemesis
Exactly.
I ever had. It was probably Scott.
I do feature in the book, so
do. You have a very good cameo, I think.
Yeah,
that's true.
I'm excited to have it.
Does my character have a name? I didn't hear a name mentioned, or
yeah, and actually, it's in.
Oh, does it mention?
God, Veronica refers, because she remarks on how you want to meet.
I thought she just said doctor, but did she? Okay, maybe I'm
Seth. You're Seth.
Okay.
Nice.
And
I do remember that
last name. It could be Seth Circland. I don't know.
The one thing I felt
remember.
was a little out of place was the Cert 22 on the back of his lab coat. I felt like that was a little that fits in Jim's work, but I don't know. That seemed like a little over the top.
Corey has a cameo, as we discussed. Jim Lujan has a cameo.
That's true.
As Dr. Luna. Dr. Luna is the next best scientist in the facility after the POV character. So.
Which, by the way, made the J Boys very happy. The J Boys. That's anyhow. Continue.
All right. So my Boy Scout play story. It's there's some similarities to it, but not exactly. So there was we had I guess everyone in Boy Scout performs a play, because we did a play too. It wasn't about any kind of space voyage or anything. I remember it was centered around a king, and the king had this declaration to all his underlings, or whatever you call them, and he's like, I need you to bring me the most important paper in the world, and the people, whatever. So I did not get cast as the character I wanted, and and certain characters just ended up getting beheaded. Like, oh no, that's the wrong paper, so you off and you or whatever. Or that was they never. I mean, obviously they didn't show this. It was
They're not doing that,
screen,
but it's off stage.
But me, not as a kid. I mean, now because I'm reading DSM and I'm thinking DvsM and I'm thinking, oh, is my character going to die or whatever? And I'm okay with that. I'd be like, oh, that's kind of cool. I mean, but back then I was like, I don't want my character to die. So when I brought in the wrong thing, it wasn't what he was looking for. It was something like the Declaration of, well, that would have been after King times, but I don't know, whatever important paper or whatever. Right. And no, that's not it. You're off with your head or whatever. They take you off stage, and so once we get off stage, I'm like, you'll never take me alive, and all this, just adding that little thing in there. But anyway, so it ended up, the gag at the end was the most important paper in the world was toilet paper. Somebody brought in a roll of toilet paper, and that was
so that's the
nice.
Yes.
I'm going to just go out on a limb and say that the Cub Scouts really benefited from our contribution.
Yes.
I mean, we really kind of spiced up some sort of boring scripts and some lame direction, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. You guys definitely took it into a new direction for sure.
There we go.
But we're not going to expand on that.
Okay.
We have directives not to.
Yes. I know.
So
God.
I just thought it was funny that you said not to expand on that.
That's right.
Okay, let's move on.
All right.
Okay.
That was not intentional.
No,
all
it
right.
wasn't. I apologize.
So let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. I guess we'll start with Gary. So Gary, let everyone know where they can find. Now, did you close it? Because you were talking about closing it out. So
not yet.
So, okay.
You can still get right now. All 3 are in stock for people. Just for the rough breakdown. Again, DvsM 1975 is a story about a man in black. 97 is a story about an innocent bystander, and 79, the newest one, is a story about a scientist in a secret lab. They are all in stock right now on my Etsy shop. You can get them. Though, in the next few days, probably I would say about Wednesday of next week, I'm going to be shutting down the store because I'm going to Phoenix Fan Fusion. And I'll be bringing my stock with me there. And I don't want to have to figure out oh, I sold some at Fan Fusion, so I got to remember to update the Etsy shop and all that stuff. I'm going to try and just make my life easier by snoozing the shop until I'm clear of the con. So if you want to get some books and you don't want to wait until maybe a couple weeks from now, or you don't want to risk waiting even longer in the event that I have a really good show and sell out, I would say get in your order now at my Etsy shop.
All right. Yeah.
And for anybody,
obviously highly recommended. So
yeah. And for anybody who might be like, oh, that's like a sales pitch, it's not. Like Gary will literally sometimes have every book off, and it'll be months before you can get a copy, or possibly half a year. So pick it up now. Yeah.
I self-fund my printing. So it's it's not just print on demand. I'll sell out and then I'll I need to scrape together a few $100s to order more books. So there can be gaps where I'm sold out. Right now I've got plenty available. So now's the time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Josh, what about you? Where can everyone find you?
You guys can find me on the internet, on YouTube. At Joshua Kemble, as well as you can find my books at bookstores online everywhere. And I would ask that you pick up a slice of life story. Oh, hold on a second. Let's get this full cam. A slice of life story about 2 roommates that are polar opposites. They're in their early 20s. The main character, Jacob, is going through an identity crisis because his father's been diagnosed with cancer. He's questioning his faith and his belief system. And Sarah, his roommate, is similarly kind of questioning her choices and her decisions in life because of a breakup with a recent lover. And both of them in this tumultuous early 20s times find themselves drawn together romantically, and as they're drawn together, their dreams, which are these trippy dreams where Jacob like dreams of himself as like a stuffed animal, this little dinosaur. There's a dinosaur in this book too, but that he had as a kid. But he is the dinosaur. And then Sarah keeps having these dreams of swimming and drowning. And both of them, their dreams and reality start interweaving in a doomed romance story that's like if you took Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind and mixed it with Ghost World, and you like that kind of flavor, this book would be right for you. It talks about a lot of heavy questions of faith, identity, and young love. So that's what I'd pitch. And then also there's autobiographical story, 2 stories, which tries to destigmatize conversations about mental health issues like depression and suicidal ideation and a lot of other heavy topics. So those are my 2 books. Check them out and support them, and also check out my live streams.
All right, Corey.
Yeah, you can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. And if you go to CoreyKerr.com/store, then you'll see all the designs that I have available, including the one that I'm wearing right now, which are all modern problems with ancient symbols, kind of mixed together with heraldry and tarot and kind of other types of things, talking about what it is like to try to be human in the midst of a barrage of technology and advancements. I love it. From being human. And you can also check out my email newsletter, CoreyKerr.com/email, where I discuss a lot of those topics and kind of show behind the scenes things and time lapse of me kind of inking that stuff.
I love it. And you guys should definitely check out Corey's series too, like on like mindfulness pretty much for artists. It's super awesome. And it's stuff that I wish I had heard when I was a younger artist. And so rather than learn it the hard way, go check out Corey's channel and you can learn it the easy way.
Yeah, and as far as me, you can find me over at my YouTube channel, CircWorks on YouTube. Search that. There's over 1,000 videos up there, and I'm taking a break from YouTube. I have been on a break for a couple months now, and I'm planning on going back next month at some point with all new content. So I'm looking forward to that. Also, you can go to my website and you can find tons of tools for making comics and all that kind of stuff, as well as my own comic, Young and the Dead, a kids versus zombie adventure stories. Just think Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. I've got 5 issues available now, and including this variant cover done by Gary Hodges. And there's also variant covers done by Corey and Josh on my channel. So this one is, I forgot which issue was this.
I think it's 3.
3, yeah. Issue 3 is Gary. So each I had different artists do a variation of each one, and you can see that's what Gary looked like in that play.
That's probably how I looked in that play. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let's see. There we go. All right. So yeah, and the other thing I wanted to mention is we do this show every single week. It rotates between Corey's channel and Josh's channel. No longer on my channel. There's a whole thing behind that, which I won't get into. The whole thing is kind of confusing, how we do this show, because we have different guests and sometimes we go on different days. It rotates channels. But if you want to know exactly when we're going to be on, who the guest is going to be, what channel we're going to be on, just join our mailing list. There's a link in the description of this video. We don't spam you or anything. We just usually about 30 minutes or so, at least before we go live, we'll send out that newsletter, and we'll have a link to where you can find us online, as YouTube doesn't always notify people. So that being said, we will see you guys next week. And who knows what channel it's going to be on, but you can, well, actually, I think we do. But anyway, just join that mailing list. And also I want to say thank you to everyone in the chat. Great questions and everything.
Yeah, thank you.
Wish we could have got to them all. I mean, we could have kept going asking Gary many more questions, but we had to cram it all in there. So thank you guys. We'll see you next week. And
happy birthday again, Josh.
Oh yes, happy birthday, Josh.
Thank you.